Amina had always been a woman of quiet presence. She worked as a housekeeper in the home of a respected company founder. Her work was simple in description but full of responsibility: cleaning, keeping the house organized, making sure everything was ready for the family when they needed it. She was not the kind of person most people noticed in a busy household, yet she had an observant eye and a calm way of handling even the smallest problems. What no one could have predicted was how this very same calmness and attention would soon save an entire company from a disaster no one else had been able to prevent. The story began on a Tuesday morning. The founder had traveled abroad for meetings with clients. His home was unusually quiet except for the faint hum of the landline phone that had been temporarily redirected from the office. The IT staff had arranged it because the office phone system was undergoing maintenance, and they had thought forwarding it to the home was safer than missing important calls. Amina did not think much of it. For her, the ringing phone was just another sound in the background, something the assistant or family members would answer. But on that particular morning, no one else was at home. The assistant was out on errands, and the founder's wife had left for a doctor's appointment. So when the phone rang, it was Amina who was closest. She hesitated at first. It was not her job to answer office calls, and she feared she might interrupt something important. But the ringing did not stop. It kept echoing through the hallway until her sense of responsibility won over her fear. She picked up the phone gently, greeted the caller politely, and listened. On the other end of the line was a man with a hurried, stressed voice. He spoke in accented English, words tumbling quickly, almost too fast for her to follow. From what she gathered, he was calling from a shipping hub overseas. Something had gone wrong with a container shipment belonging to the company. The goods were stuck at customs, and the codes on the documents did not match the labels on the cartons. The officials were refusing to release the shipment, and if it did not move that day, the company would lose its delivery deadline for a major client. Amina did not fully understand all the technical words at first, but she recognized panic in the caller's tone. She quickly grabbed a notebook and began writing down every detail: container number, product codes, purchase order references, and the client's name. She repeated the numbers back to make sure she had them correct. The man, relieved that someone was at least listening carefully, kept giving her the information. By the time the call ended, her notebook page was covered in urgent scribbles. When she placed the phone down, Amina felt her heart beat faster. She knew this was not her responsibility. She was a housekeeper, not an office manager. Yet something inside her told her that if she ignored the message, the consequences would be severe. She tried calling the founder, but he was unreachable, still in meetings overseas. She tried calling the operations manager, but all she reached was a voicemail. For a moment, she stood there, unsure what to do next. Then, slowly, she decided that the least she could do was to keep the information safe and be ready to explain it to the first company staff member she could reach. She sat at the kitchen table with her notebook open, thinking carefully about what she had heard. She recalled her brief experience years earlier working at a courier service desk. Back then, she had learned the basics of shipment documents, invoices, packing lists, and tracking numbers. The memory gave her enough courage to understand that what the caller described was a mismatch between documents, a detail that might look small on paper but could cause a big block at customs. She realized the situation was urgent. Without corrected papers, nothing would move. The phone rang again. This time it was the same caller, sounding even more desperate. Customs had given them a strict deadline. If corrections were not made within hours, the goods would be declared non-compliant, and additional fees would be applied. Amina's calm voice seemed to reassure him, so he kept explaining, asking if someone from the company could please act immediately. Amina listened carefully, apologizing that she was not the right person but promising she would try to pass the message on. After hanging up again, she tried to reach more staff. Still no answer. The house felt heavy with silence, and she wondered if she had already done enough. But her instincts told her not to stop. She went to the study where the founder often worked and noticed papers left on the desk. Among them was a freshly printed packing list. She picked it up and compared it with the codes she had written in her notebook. Her eyes scanned the numbers carefully. Something stood out: the codes on the packing list were slightly different from the ones the caller had given her. It was just a few digits off, but she realized that might be the problem. She stared at the list and thought about how often small mistakes were ignored until they grew into big troubles. Her hands trembled slightly as she wondered what to do next. She was not trained in this field, but she also knew that if no one acted, the shipment would be lost. She could hear the urgency in the caller's voice replaying in her mind. The thought of an entire company's future resting on a few corrected numbers seemed unreal, yet somehow the responsibility had landed in her lap. Amina took a deep breath and decided she would not let fear hold her back. She returned to the phone and called the shipping hub back, telling them she was only a staff member at the founder's home but that she had the codes in front of her. She asked them to slowly explain once more where the mismatch was. They did, and she carefully marked the differences on the paper. Then she assured them she would keep trying to reach the management team until someone could officially resolve it. As she put the phone down once more, she realized something important. Even though she was just a housekeeper, she had already made herself part of the solution. She had calmed down the caller, noted every important detail, and even identified where the mistake likely was. She might not have had the authority to finalize anything, but she had bought the company time. And in matters of business, time could mean the difference between success and failure. The rest of that day felt like walking a tightrope. Amina stayed near the phone, answering whenever it rang, repeating information, keeping the line alive until someone official could take over. Each time she spoke, she grew a little more confident, realizing that her clarity and patience were exactly what the situation needed. She did not panic. She did not raise her voice. She simply listened, wrote, and repeated, making sure no detail was lost. By evening, though tired, she felt something unusual: pride. She had stepped into a situation no one had asked her to handle and held it together long enough for the right people to respond. She thought about her own life, the quiet years of working unnoticed, and she felt a spark of recognition within herself. Sometimes, she realized, life gives you unexpected calls. The question is whether you pick up the phone or let it keep ringing. That day, she had chosen to answer. And by doing so, she had set in motion a chain of events that would soon prove life-changing for herself and for the company she served. Amina woke up the next morning with the same careful routine she always kept. She made tea, opened the curtains, and checked that the house was in order. Yet inside her, the calm of routine was mixed with the memory of yesterday's phone calls. She had promised a stranger across the ocean that she would not let the message get lost. She had written down every number and code. She had tried to call the right people and could not reach them. Now, as the landline blinked softly on the kitchen counter, she knew the day would not be ordinary. Somewhere far away, a container full of the company's goods was stuck, and every hour mattered. She pulled her small notebook closer and read the details again from the first page: container number, purchase order reference, product descriptions, and the two versions of the SKU codes that did not match. She underlined the difference in a neat line. It still amazed her how a few digits could cause such a big problem. The caller had said customs wanted the documents fixed and re-uploaded before the afternoon deadline. Amina pictured a large building with quiet halls and polite officers who checked forms against labels. It was easier for her to think of people than systems. People had faces, and faces had feelings. If she could keep people calm and make things clear, perhaps the rest would follow. She opened the study door and looked at the desk where the founder usually worked. The neat stacks of paper were like little cities, each with its own purpose. On one pile she found a printout named Master SKU Sheet Q3. Along the right edge was a sticky note in the founder's handwriting: "Update codes in invoice Monday." Amina felt a small spark of recognition. This sheet listed old codes and new codes side by side. She traced the lines with her finger, and there it was: the product code on the packing list matched the column labeled old, while the purchase order and price sheet matched the column labeled new. The problem was now more than a guess. It was in front of her in black and white. Her mind traveled back to the year she spent working at a courier counter before this job. Students had come in with boxes of books, parents with gifts, office staff with bundles of printed reports. Many times they had confused labels, used the wrong form, or filled in numbers too quickly. She had learned to slow people down. "Read it out loud," she used to say with a friendly smile. "Let's match the words and the numbers." That simple habit had solved more problems than any rule. Now she repeated the same words in her head. "Read it out loud. Match words and numbers. Keep it steady." She took out a fresh page and drew 3 columns with her pen: label, invoice, HS code. She filled the first few rows with the details she had, leaving blank spaces for the parts she still needed to confirm. The landline rang. "The same overseas number?" Amina answered with a gentle greeting. The caller sounded more tired than yesterday, and his English felt a little more careful, as if he too had decided to slow down. He told her customs would accept corrections if they arrived soon. They needed a corrected commercial invoice and a corrected packing list. They might also ask for a short letter of explanation. Amina asked for photos of the carton labels so she could compare them with the invoice, and for a screenshot of the customs portal message. He agreed and asked where to send them. Amina did not want to share a private family email, but the home had a general address used for deliveries and service appointments. She gave him that address and asked him to copy the operations office email as well. She repeated the address twice, slowly, so there would be no errors. As she waited for the images, she opened a translation app on her phone. She typed a few keywords that the caller had used yesterday: HS code, ASN, relabel, demurrage. The simple definitions reminded her that each request had a reason. The HS code told customs what the product was, the invoice told them the price and the quantity, the packing list told them the boxes and weight, the labels told them what was physically inside. If all those pieces told the same story, the container would move. If they did not, the system would stop it. The logic made sense to her. It was like housekeeping: if the key, the lock, and the door did not fit, you could not enter. The emails arrived with the photos. Amina studied them closely. The label photo showed the SKU with the old code and a small Rev B. The invoice screenshot used the new code and Rev C. She did not know what the revision letters meant, but she guessed it was the design version or packaging version. She called the shipping hub back and asked to speak slowly. "Please check with the warehouse," she said in clear, steady words. "Is the product inside the box the same as the product on the invoice, only the printed label is old? Or is the product itself an older version?" The pause felt long, but finally the answer came: the product inside matched the invoice. The label had not been updated when the codes changed last month. This was at least good news. No one had to change the goods. They only had to fix labels and documents. Amina drew a small check mark by product match. Then she wrote the day's timeline in the margin. By noon, corrected documents ready. By 1, labels printed. By 2, files uploaded to the portal. By 3, broker review. By 5, release and truck on the road. She knew things might slip, so she left small buffers at each step. She circled the times and said them softly to herself until they felt real. The house was quiet except for the small sounds of the refrigerator and her pen scratching on paper. Each small sound made the plan feel more solid. She tried the operations manager again. No answer. She tried the procurement lead listed in the founder's contact book. Voicemail. She left a calm, brief message. This is Amina from the founder's home. The container for the major client is on customs hold because the packing list has the old SKU. I have the Q3 master sheet showing old versus new codes. I can share details if needed. Please call me at the house line. She kept her tone even. She knew that people were more likely to call back when they heard a message that sounded organized rather than emotional. Next, she called the local warehouse number printed on a delivery slip. The person who answered spoke kindly but said they could not share certain details without authorization. Amina understood. It's fine, she replied softly. May I confirm only non-sensitive details? The number of cartons, whether any labels are already updated, and whether a relabel can be done this afternoon if needed. The person checked and returned with brief answers. 48 cartons total, 3 pallets showed a mix of old labels, and the printer could produce new labels within an hour once the codes were confirmed. Amina thanked them and wrote the 3 facts down. 2 simple lines next to her timeline became bold with possibility. Relabel possible by 1, counts confirmed 48. She turned to the computer and opened a blank document. She titled it in plain words, Action Note Container Release Today. There she listed the situation in 5 short lines: wrong SKU on packing list, correct SKU on purchase order and invoice, HS code needs reconfirmation, labels on 3 pallets need updating, customs portal waiting for corrected files. Then she turned to the next section and wrote 3 lists: who, what, when. Who, operations manager, forwarder contact, warehouse lead, customs broker, CFO's assistant. What, issue letter of authorization, reissue invoice and packing list with correct SKU and HS code, print new labels for the 3 pallets, upload files, confirm release. When, noon, 1, 2, 3, 5. She kept the sentences short and used simple verbs. She wanted anyone to read it and know exactly what to do. While she worked, a light rain began outside. It tapped the windows and cooled the house. The sound steadied her. She printed the action note and taped it next to the landline so it would be ready when someone called back. Then she wrote a draft email for the operations team with a clear subject line: urgent, customs hold needs corrected invoice/packing list today. In the body, she laid out the 5 lines from her note, attached the label photo and the master SKU sheet, and ended with a polite sentence: I am on the house line and can relay updates if helpful. Thank you. She saved it in the drafts folder, ready for the owner to review and send. The next call was from the freight forwarder's main desk. The person sounded firm but fair. They explained that penalties would start in the evening if the container stayed on hold. Amina asked for the most important item on their side. If the corrected documents are uploaded, the person said, we can push a portal refresh and alert the broker to review sooner. Amina repeated it back to be sure: corrected documents trigger refresh, refresh triggers review. She added a simple request: if we send you a short letter explaining the SKU change, will that help? The forwarder agreed. She thanked them and hung up. Amina then drafted the letter text in a few lines of plain English so the company could copy it later: we recently updated our SKU format from old to new without changing the product. The labels on some cartons still display the old SKU due to a packaging transition. The goods are identical to the invoice description. We have corrected the packing list and invoice accordingly. She read the lines out loud and corrected a few words so they were even simpler. She printed the draft and placed it under a paperweight shaped like a small paper boat the founder's child had made long ago. The minutes passed. She checked the time zones on her phone. In the city where the container waited, the day was already moving fast. In the city where the founder was traveling, meetings were likely just beginning. In her own city, it was late morning and the house felt like a lighthouse, small but bright, sending signals into busy seas. The picture made her smile for a second. She returned to her list and added one more item: confirm HS code with product team. She did not know if the HS code needed to change, but she knew it was safer to ask. A wrong HS code could cause questions later. She searched through the study drawers and found a thin folder labeled product specs. Inside was a sheet with a standard HS code printed beside each product family. She compared it to the invoice screenshot and felt relief. The code matched. She wrote HS code confirmed with a small star. Another email arrived from the shipping hub. The warehouse had prepared a file with updated label PDFs and was waiting for approval to print and apply. They also shared a barcode scan report that showed the counts by pallet. The numbers matched the purchase order. Amina drew another check mark. Counts confirmed. Only two big things remained: someone with authority had to approve and sign the corrected documents, and someone had to upload them to the portal. She looked at her action note again. The first who on the list could do both if they were available. But she still had no call back. She took a breath and looked around the quiet kitchen. The kettle clicked softly as it cooled. A faint breeze from the rain snuck in through the window gap. Everything in the room felt ordinary, but the paper on the counter told a different story. She thought of all the people connected by this container: the client with a launch date, the warehouse team who had worked late to pack boxes, the forwarder who watched a list of shipments move across their screen, and the broker who checked documents line by line. She felt respect for each person doing their part. She also felt the weight of the one part no one had done yet: giving permission. She could not sign the company's name. She could not upload files under a company login. She needed someone to give her the ability to help properly, even if only for a day. She prepared for that moment. On a fresh page, she wrote a simple request she would read word for word to the CFO's assistant: please send a letter of authorization that lets partners discuss the container with me by name, and let me relay documents between the warehouse, forwarder, and broker. If possible, permit me to email from a temporary address or allow the partners to copy me on the thread so I can keep everyone aligned until you or the operations manager is free. She practiced the lines under her breath until they sounded natural. Then she added a final sentence to her plan: if fees must be approved to move faster, please state in the letter that the forwarder can bill up to a set amount today. She knew clearer permission would save time later. The rain grew steadier. Amina checked the clock. Noon was getting close, and her timeline had a red circle around it. She called the operations manager again and left the same short message, this time adding the words: I have the corrected details ready to share. Then she dialed the number for the CFO's assistant, held the phone to her ear, and listened to the ringtone. It went to voicemail. She spoke slowly, keeping the message short and exact. She said her name. She explained the customs hold in one sentence. She explained the mismatch in one sentence. She asked for a letter of authorization and said she had a draft of the needed steps in an email ready to send. She ended with the house line number and a polite thank you. When she hung up, she did not pace or worry. She simply straightened the papers, checked that the printer had ink, and lined up the notes she would need if the call came through. Her plan was a row of tiny, clear bridges from problem to solution. Now she waited for the person with the key to say, yes, you may cross. Outside, the rain softened, and the kitchen felt full of quiet purpose. Amina took another sip of tea and looked at the clock again. She was ready. The call finally came a little after noon. The phone's ring felt louder than usual, even though the house was quiet. Amina picked up with her steady greeting and heard the calm, warm voice of the CFO's assistant. The assistant thanked her for the clear messages and said she had spoken with the CFO. They understood the urgency. A letter of authorization would be sent within minutes, naming Amina as the point of contact for the container that was on hold. The assistant also said she would loop in the operations manager, the procurement lead, the forwarder, and the customs broker on one email thread so everyone could see the same information. Amina felt the air in her lungs deepen. She said thank you and kept her words short and clear. When she hung up, she did not cheer or rush. She simply straightened her papers and waited for the email to arrive. The message appeared with a soft chime. The subject line was clean, authorization plus action thread, container number. A one-page PDF was attached. It said that Amina, by name, could gather documents, relay corrections, and ask partners to move steps forward up to a small, clear limit for the day. It also mentioned that any small fee needed for reprints or courier runs was pre-approved. Amina printed a copy and placed it beside the phone like a key on a small white plate. She replied to the thread in simple words. She summarized the mismatch between old and new product codes, listed the 5 steps required, and attached the photo of the label, the screenshot of the customs message, and the master SKU sheet Q3. She ended with one line, "I will keep updates short, with time stamps." Within minutes, replies began to stack. The forwarder confirmed they were watching the portal and could push a refresh when corrected files were uploaded. The broker said they could review early if the invoice and packing list were clear and if a short letter explained the code change. The procurement lead said she could reissue the documents in an hour but needed to double-check the HS code, the category number used by customs. Amina felt grateful she had already checked the product sheet. She replied gently, "HS code 8471.60 matches product family per attached spec sheet." The procurement lead thanked her. The small act saved 5 minutes and made the next step feel lighter. Amina then called the warehouse lead. She introduced herself and mentioned the authorization letter. Her voice stayed calm and simple. She asked if the label printer was ready, and if they could print 48 corrected labels and apply them to the pallets that showed old codes. The warehouse lead answered yes, as soon as the final SKU format and product description were confirmed. Amina repeated the new code slowly, letter by letter and digit by digit, and asked the lead to read it back. They did. Both smiled at the same time without seeing each other. It is a special relief when two people far apart land on the same row of numbers. Next, she created a small group chat with permission from the email thread. She added the warehouse lead, the forwarder contact, the broker's duty desk, and the procurement lead. She typed the group name in plain words, "Container release today." Then she wrote the first message, timeline target, 12:45 invoice and packing list, 13:15 labels printed, 1400 hours upload and portal refresh, 1500 hours broker review, 1600 hours release, 1700 hours truck on road. Please share a thumbs up when your step is done. Simple, respectful, and direct. The thumbs up icons arrived one by one as each person acknowledged their part. At 12:38, the first small test arrived. The draft invoice came in a PDF format with the new code and a product description that was one word longer than the label. Amina compared every line with her notes. The quantity and price matched the purchase order. The HS code matched the product sheet. But the description on the invoice said adapter kit while the label said adapter kit Rev C. She wrote one line back to procurement, "Kindly add Rev C to invoice description so it matches the label and packing list." Thank you. The updated invoice arrived at 12:44. She added a small check mark on her paper and sent another short note to the group, "Invoice ready, packing list next." The packing list arrived at 12:55. It showed 48 cartons, 3 pallets with mixed labels, total weight that matched the warehouse report, and the new SKU code. Amina read it aloud to herself, just as she had told customers to do at the courier counter years ago. Nothing felt off. She sent it to the forwarder and broker in the email thread and posted "packing list ready" in the group chat. Then she turned to the warehouse lead and asked, "May I confirm you can print and apply labels by 13:15? The reply came with a photo of a printer warming up. On it, the lead wrote. Amina smiled and made a small dot next to 13:15. At 13:07, another tiny wave rose and settled. The label template showed the new code in bold type, but the barcode underneath still referenced the old code. The warehouse lead caught it and flagged the group with a polite message. Amina thanked them and pinged procurement, barcode data field still pulling old code, kindly refresh template. The corrected label template appeared 2 minutes later. The warehouse sent a quick video clip of the first label printing clean and clear. The group chat felt almost like a room where people glanced at each other and nodded. The labels began to roll. By 13:22, the warehouse sent a photo of the first pallet with corrected labels applied. Amina replied with a heart and a simple "great work." She then called the forwarder and said, "We will upload the corrected files at 1400 hours. Could you please be ready to push the portal refresh as soon as they land?" The forwarder said yes, and also asked for the letter of explanation to send to the broker at the same time. Amina pulled up the draft she had written the day before, read it once more, made one tiny edit to keep the words even simpler, and sent it on behalf of the team with the CFO assistant copied. The assistant replied with a brief "approved." At 13:40, Amina received a quiet call from the broker's duty desk. The person sounded measured and kind. "We can queue your review for 15:00, they said, "but if you upload by 13:55, we might be able to look sooner." Amina thanked them and said she would try. She then pinged procurement, "Would you mind uploading at 13:50 instead of 14:00? Procurement said they would aim for 13:50 and would send a confirmation screenshot. The house around her stayed still. The rain had slowed to a light mist. The printer in the study, now quiet, held a neat stack of extra copies. Amina poured herself a small glass of water and went back to the kitchen counter where her timeline lay next to the phone. She placed her finger on each time mark like a conductor tapping the next note. It felt less like rushing and more like keeping a rhythm steady. Simple steps, taken at the right moment, become a song. At 13:49, the procurement lead uploaded the corrected invoice and packing list. A screenshot arrived in the group chat with a pale green banner that read "File received." A minute later, the forwarder replied, "Pushed portal refresh." Then the broker chimed in with "Files visible on our end." Amina breathed out very slowly. She reached for her pen and drew a warm circle around 1400 hours. That circle meant a bridge had been crossed. A small pause appeared right after. The broker started to review and asked one clarifying question by email: "Please confirm whether labels applied to 3 pallets or all pallets." The warehouse lead answered promptly, "All pallets now have new labels, first 3 needed replacement, the rest verified." Amina repeated that in one short sentence back to the broker to keep the trail tidy. One more step clicked into place. At 14:26, the broker requested the letter of explanation in a separate PDF with a signature. The CFO's assistant responded within 4 minutes with a clean, signed copy. Amina forwarded it to the group chat so the warehouse and forwarder could see the progress too. "Thank you," the broker wrote. "Review continues." While she waited, Amina prepared for the step after release. She called the forwarder's local depot and asked if a truck could be placed on standby for late afternoon. The person confirmed they could assign a driver and would need a gate pass as soon as the status turned green. Amina typed into the group, "Truck on standby, gate pass will follow." This small message did more than inform, it told everyone the plan extended beyond the hold. It said, quietly, that they were already thinking one step beyond the moment of relief. At 14:58, the phone rang again. It was the broker. The voice carried a smile you could hear. "Thank you for the clean documents," they said. "We have lifted the hold in the system. You should see the status update within the next few minutes." Amina pressed her lips together and closed her eyes for a second. "Thank you for your quick work," she replied. "We are grateful." She hung up and, without delay, wrote to the group, "Broker confirmed, hold lifted. Watching for status change." Thumbs up and short cheers rolled in, not loud or messy, Just happy. At 15:04, the forwarder sent a screenshot of the portal showing the red banner replaced by a soft green line. Released, it said. A minute later, the depot confirmed the truck booking and asked for the gate pass number. The broker sent the number at 15:12. The forwarder relayed it to the depot at 15:13. The depot replied that the driver was en route at 15:20. Amina wrote a simple line to the email thread for leadership: hold lifted at 15:04, truck assigned, ETA to client within window. Only then did she allow herself a long breath and a small smile that lasted. She looked at the neat trail of messages, each one like a stone across water. None of them were dramatic. None of them were loud. But together, they made a path that moved a heavy thing from stuck to free. She thought about yesterday's first call, when she had felt unsure and alone in a quiet house with a ringing phone. She thought about how many people had stepped in today because the steps were clear and the tone was calm. The story had never been about one person doing everything. It had been about many people doing the right next thing, in the right order, at the right time. There was one more simple task she wanted to finish before the truck reached the client later that evening. She opened a new document and wrote a short list titled in plain words, "What helped today?" She wrote 5 points. First, write numbers down and read them out loud. Second, show the same documents to everyone at the same time. Third, use one timeline and give it to all partners. Fourth, keep messages short, kind, and exact. Fifth, ask for clear permission early. She saved the note and printed one copy to slip into the study folder. She did not know it yet, but this small page would become a seed for a better process later. As the afternoon light bent across the kitchen tiles, the group chat pinged with a photo from the depot, the truck's rear doors closed and sealed, the driver giving a small wave. The caption read, "Rolling." Amina replied with 2 words, "Safe drive." She turned the landline's volume down 1 step and tidied the counter. Her notebook, thick with careful marks, looked almost like a map. She smoothed the pages and closed it gently. The turning point had arrived, not with fanfare, but with steady hands and well-placed words. Amina did not think of herself as a hero. She thought of herself as a helper who had been given a chance to help in a new way. The container was free. The truck was moving. The evening would bring a delivery and relief to people she had never met. And somewhere within her, a quiet door had opened to a hallway she had not walked before. The truck reached the client's site just before evening, while the sky was still pale with late daylight. The driver called the depot to confirm he was at the gate, and the depot sent a short message into the group chat Amina had created. The message was only 1 word: arrived, but it carried the feeling of a long breath finally released. Amina looked at the clock on the wall and then at the notes she had kept so carefully. The times matched. The plan had held. Soon after, another update came with a photo of the warehouse dock. You could see the truck backed into the loading bay, the doors open, a neat line of pallets ready to be checked by the client's receiving team. The dock workers wore bright safety vests and calm expressions. The caption under the photo read, "Inspection starting." Amina typed a simple reply, "Thank you for your care." She meant it. Good work is never only about speed, it is also about respect. While the client's team scanned barcodes and counted boxes, Amina took a few quiet minutes to tidy the kitchen and gather her papers. She placed her notebook, the printed timeline, and the authorization letter into a single folder. She was not sure whether anyone would ever ask to see these items, but a small part of her hoped they would. Not for praise, but because she had learned something useful that might help again. She placed the folder on the study desk and returned to the kitchen just in time to hear the landline ring once more. This time it was the operations manager. His voice carried both relief and apology. He had seen the thread, followed the updates, and wanted to thank Amina for keeping the day together when everyone else had been in meetings or traveling. He asked how she was doing. Amina kept her answer simple. She said she was fine and that everyone had been helpful and kind in the group chat. The manager told her the client would send a formal acknowledgement after they finished checking the delivery. He also asked if she would be willing to join a short call the next morning to walk through her action note and the steps she had coordinated. She said yes in a quiet voice and felt a small warmth spread in her chest. The voice on the other end sounded grateful. He promised to send a calendar invite with a video link. The next update arrived from the client's receiving team. Their message was clear: the counts matched the purchase order, the labels were now correct, and the goods were ready to move to the installation team. They ended with one short line: "Thank you for the fast correction." The forwarder echoed the thanks in the thread. The broker added a polite note that the file had been closed. The procurement lead wrote, "Great teamwork, everyone." Amina read each line slowly, as if the words were small lights turning on along a path. Not long after, the CFO's assistant sent a separate email to leadership summarizing outcomes. The summary used simple bullets: hold lifted at 15:04, truck dispatched at 15:20, delivery confirmed, penalty avoided, demurrage not applied, client launch kept on schedule. At the bottom, the assistant added one more line: special thanks to Amina for steady coordination and clear notes. Seeing her name in that context felt unusual, like noticing your reflection in a window you pass every day without looking. She did not linger on the feeling. She poured a fresh cup of tea and texted the warehouse lead, "Thank you for catching the barcode detail. That saved time." Evening settled softly over the house. The street outside was quiet after the rain. Amina made a simple dinner, washed the dishes, and put away the mugs. Her hands moved with the calm rhythm of routine, but her thoughts wandered through the day in gentle steps. She remembered each small check mark, each uploaded file, each careful yes and please and thank you. It amazed her how many people, most of whom had never met, had moved together like a single team simply because the steps were shared clearly. That thought made her smile. She slept well that night, not with excitement, but with the peace that comes when a hard problem has been put down carefully. Morning brought a thin golden light and a clean sky. At the set time, Amina sat at the study desk with her folder open and clicked the video link sent by the operations manager. The screen filled with small squares, faces from the warehouse, the forwarder, the broker, procurement, and the CFO's assistant. Everyone greeted her with kindness. The operations manager guided the conversation with a soft voice. "We want to understand what went wrong and what went right," he said, "and then write a simple plan to prevent this next time." Amina spoke slowly, using the action note as her map. She explained how the phone had been forwarded, how the first call had come through, and how she had written down the container number, the codes, and the names. She described finding the master SKU sheet with the old and new codes side by side, and how that sheet had made the mismatch clear. She shared the timeline she had drawn with target times for each step, and how that had helped keep everyone moving at the same rhythm. The procurement lead nodded. The broker smiled when she mentioned the letter of explanation. The warehouse lead lifted a thumb when she talked about the barcode field. The forwarder added a brief note about the value of sending the same files to all partners at the same time. The CFO's assistant said that the letter of authorization had made a real difference. The operations manager asked Amina if she could send her action note and the short list she had titled "What Helped Today." She agreed and emailed both documents after the call. Then he asked if she would be comfortable visiting the operations floor the next day. "We'd like to turn your notes into a simple checklist," he said, "something the team can use to double-check shipments and labels before the truck leaves, and something we can pull out on days when time is tight." Amina hesitated for a second, not because she was nervous, but because it felt unusual to be invited into a space she had only ever seen from the outside. She said yes with a small, steady smile. The visit happened the following afternoon. The operations floor was full of useful motion, people checking screens, printers humming, boxes moving along clean aisles. The manager introduced Amina to the team, not with fanfare, but with honest warmth. "This is Amina," he said. "Her calm plan helped us keep a promise." People shook her hand and thanked her in short, sincere words. She felt both grateful and a little shy. They gathered around a whiteboard. The manager wrote pre-shipment double check at the top. Amina walked through her 5 points again, this time turning each into a box on the board: confirm product code, old vs new, against purchase order, confirm HS code against product family sheet, match descriptions exactly across invoice, packing list, and labels, verify barcode field maps to the current code, set one timeline and share it with all partners, prepare a plain language letter if a transition is in progress. The team added 2 more boxes: route urgent calls to the operations desk, not the home line, and assign a steady voice for the day one person who keeps the updates short and kind. The last box made Amina blush a little, but the team meant it as a role anyone could fill with the right mindset. They spent the next hour turning the whiteboard boxes into a one-page checklist. Amina suggested adding a small section at the bottom for timestamps and who confirmed. The warehouse lead proposed a simple traffic light marker: green for matched, yellow for needs check, red for mismatch. The forwarder recommended a standard subject line format for urgent threads so they could be searched later. The broker offered 2 sample sentences that explained code transitions in plain words suitable for customs notes. The procurement lead volunteered to update the label template so the barcode field would always pull from the newest code table. Piece by piece, the checklist took shape, practical and clear. Before she left, the HR manager stopped by with a friendly smile. She thanked Amina for her help and mentioned that the company had a part-time training pathway in logistics for people who wanted to learn more. "If you're interested," she said, "we can sponsor a short course, and you can help our team a few afternoons each week while keeping your morning schedule at the house. No pressure. Simply an open door if it fits your life." Amina listened quietly and said she would think about it. The offer felt like the sun coming out from behind a cloud, gentle but bright. That evening, an email arrived from the client's project director. It was short and warm. She wrote that the delivery had arrived in time, the installation had started, and their launch date was safe. She thanked the whole team and, in a final line, thanked Amina by name for steady hands and clear words. The founder, still traveling, replied to all with a simple message: proud of the team. Proud of Amina. Amina read the note once and closed her eyes for a moment. The praise felt like a soft hand on the shoulder, supportive, not heavy. In the days that followed, the checklist was printed, laminated, and clipped to a small board near the label printer. A digital version was added to the operations folder with a file name that began with the words "read first." The call routing was corrected so that urgent numbers went to an operations duty phone rather than the home line. The template for labels was updated so that the barcode field and the printed code were always drawn from the same source. The group also set up a standard day thread for high-priority shipments so all partners could see the same updates in one place. None of these changes were dramatic. Each was a small turn of a dial that made the whole system hum a little smoother. A week later, the founder returned and invited Amina to a short meeting in the office conference room. He thanked her for her care, not only for the family, but for the company during a stressful moment. He asked her to share, in her own words, what she thought had mattered most. She answered simply. She said that writing numbers down, reading them out loud, and matching words across documents had helped. She said that kind, short, exact messages had kept people calm and focused. She said that one timeline, shared by everyone, had given the day a rhythm. The founder nodded and said those ideas would become part of the company's training materials. He asked if she would like to help the team write a brief plain language playbook that explained these steps for new hires. She said yes, and he smiled. "Let's build it together," he said. Back at the house, life returned to its familiar pattern, but something in Amina's steps felt a little taller. She still polished the silver, watered the plants, and checked the pantry with the same care as always. Yet she also spent a few extra minutes each day reviewing notes for the playbook and adding small examples to make the ideas feel real. She typed simple phrases and then made them simpler. She made a section called When It's Urgent with 3 short rules: stay kind, be exact, share the same view. She made another section called When Codes Change with a 2-line reminder: if any label, invoice, or list uses an old code, stop and align. Match all names and numbers. Each page felt like a friendly handrail someone could hold when the day moved fast. The ripples of that week were not loud. They showed up in quiet ways: a warehouse employee double-checking a barcode field without being asked, a broker noting how clear a letter was and approving a file a little faster, a forwarder smiling when a subject line made a thread easy to find, a procurement lead adding rev information to keep descriptions precise. People were not working harder, they were working with a little more light. One afternoon, as Amina passed the study, she saw the folder she had kept during the storm of calls. She opened it and looked at the first page. The messy notes from the day a stranger's voice had filled the kitchen with urgency. She thought about how thin that page had felt at the time and how strong it had become when joined to other pages and other hands. She closed the folder and put it back in the desk, not as a trophy, but as a simple reminder: a clear mind, a steady voice, and a respectful team can carry heavy things. When the next busy season arrived, the checklist and playbook were already in use. Shipments moved with fewer questions. When questions did arise, they were answered with kind, exact words and shared documents. People still made mistakes from time to time, that is the nature of honest work. But the mistakes did not grow into crises as often, because the team had learned to catch them early, together. And in quiet moments, someone would smile and say, "Read it out loud," and the room would nod as if they were all hearing the same simple music. The company was not saved in a single day, as stories sometimes say; it was strengthened day by people who cared. Still, there was a day when a phone rang, a careful person answered, and a plan began, a plan carried by calm voices across cities and oceans. That day's careful work became a small, steady light the company kept on, so that future days could find their way. Weeks passed, and life shaped itself into a new rhythm for Amina. Mornings, she still arrived at the founder's home on time, smoothing tablecloths, watering the plants, and leaving small notes to remind the family of deliveries. Afternoons, she rode a city bus to the operations office, where a desk had been cleared for her near the label printer and the big wall calendar. Evenings, she took her seat in a classroom at the community college, a pen in hand and a quiet eagerness in her eyes. The first night of class, the instructor wrote "Introduction to Supply Chain" on the whiteboard. The words looked simple, but to Amina they felt like a door opening. The company had arranged a flexible schedule so she could learn while working. It felt generous and also practical. After the shipment crisis, everyone agreed that clear thinking and shared steps were worth investing in. HR helped her enroll and gave her a small stack of books, which she covered in brown paper the way she used to cover school books as a child. On the inside flap of the first book, she wrote her name and one simple sentence: "Be calm, be clear, be kind." It was not a rule she had learned from anyone else, it was the rule she believed could carry her through most days. On her second week in class, the instructor explained different kinds of demand, how people planned inventory, and why labels mattered. Amina's notes were neat but alive, filled with small arrows and plain words that translated big terms into simple steps. When the teacher asked for an example of how documents can disagree, Amina lifted her hand and told a short story about codes that changed on paper but not on boxes, about a phone call that reached the wrong line, and about people who found the same rhythm once they shared the same view. The class listened closely. Afterward, a young student whispered, "That sounds like a case study." Amina smiled and said, "It was just a Tuesday." Back at the office, the plain language playbook she had started began to grow. She did not rush it. Each page had one idea, one story, and one small picture or screenshot. She created a page called Words That Are Friends, where she matched common terms, invoice with price and quantity, packing list with boxes and weight, label with what's printed, barcode with what's scanned. She drew lines between them like cousins at a family picnic. On another page, she wrote when a code changes, and she added 2 check boxes, change the label template and change the barcode source. She pasted a screenshot with a red circle around the field that had caused the problem before, and she wrote a tiny caption under it, "This box pulls the code. Make sure it pulls the newest one." People liked the playbook because it spoke like a person, not like a manual. New hires read it and nodded. Old hands flipped through it and said, "Yes, this is how it actually works." The forwarder printed one page and taped it near their desk. The broker said the letter of explanation template had saved time 3 different times in a single month. The operations manager asked Amina to add a page about tone, how to write messages that were short and respectful even when the day was busy. She made a list with 5 gentle lines: greet by name, state the step, attach the file, ask one clear question, say thank you. It was not just the documents that changed, the culture shifted in small, friendly ways. Someone added a jar of pens to the printer table with a little sign that said "Read it out loud." The founder, passing through, smiled when he saw it. The team began using a standard subject line for urgent threads, today shipment number step name. With that format, no one had to ask, where is the latest file? The latest file was always where the subject line said it would be. The shared timeline became a habit, and it moved with them from day to day like quiet music: 12:45, 13:15, 13:50, 1500, 1700. People joked that they could hear Amina's voice counting in their heads, but it was a kind joke, the kind that says, "We like this rhythm." One afternoon, the operations manager asked Amina to join a meeting with a small group of community college students who were visiting the office. He wanted them to see what real logistics looked like. Amina showed them the checklist and explained how simple steps prevent big problems. She printed a copy for each student and had them underline every place where 2 different documents had to match. When one student said, "It's like double-entry bookkeeping for boxes," Amina laughed softly and nodded. "Yes," she said, "it's a way to make sure the story is the same no matter which page you read." She kept learning, too. In class, she studied Incoterms and what they meant for who pays for what. She learned about buffer stock and safety stock and how people choose the size of a batch. She learned the difference between a problem and a symptom. When the instructor gave a mock exercise plan, a delivery to 3 cities with 1 truck, Amina made a small timeline and assigned 3 tiny groups in the class: sender, mover, receiver. Share the same view, she said, and the exercise ran smoothly because the groups did not hide their information. The teacher gave a small smile and said, "That is project management." Amina only shrugged and said, "That is kindness with a calendar." The founder invited her to a monthly review meeting to share a few simple metrics. She did not show charts at first, she told stories. "This month," she said, "we had 2 shipments where codes were being updated. In both cases, the team used the letter template and the shared thread. Both moved on time." She paused and then added one number: 0 holds. The room clapped a little, not loudly, but in a way that felt like a warm blanket. After that, HR encouraged her to lead a short first-week session for new hires on the operations floor. She kept it short and hands-on. She had them read 2 lines out loud from 2 different documents, circle differences with a pen, and fix them together. People walked away relaxed because they had done the work with their hands and could feel it. At the house, Amina stayed the same and a little different. She still left a folded napkin just so, caught the tiny streak on a wine glass before anyone saw it, and remembered to put a note on the fridge for the child's art show. But the family also noticed her new books and her evening schedule and asked how class was going. She answered with the same calm warmth, "It's good." When the founder returned from a trip, he asked whether the new role was too heavy. She shook her head and said, "It's a lot, but it is not heavy when many hands carry it." There were small obstacles, of course. On one busy day, a supplier forgot to attach the corrected packing list, and the team almost uploaded the invoice alone. Amina noticed the missing file and nudged the thread gently, "Packing list, please." It arrived in minutes. On another day, a label printer jammed. No one panicked. The checklist had a note for that: backup printer location, aisle 3. They moved to aisle 3 and kept the rhythm. In class, she struggled one week with a math problem about reorder points. She asked the teacher for 2 extra examples and solved them carefully, writing out each step in words, not just numbers. By the weekend, she could explain the idea to a classmate in simple language. When her classmate said, "I get it now," Amina felt a quiet joy, the kind that says, "We are helping each other learn." Her certificate ceremony came on a bright afternoon with folding chairs and paper diplomas. She wore a neat dress and a small necklace she had bought to mark the day. The founder's family sent flowers. The operations team sent a card signed by many hands, and one message read, "Thank you for making our work feel lighter." Amina held the paper and took a picture in front of a plain blue backdrop. Later, at the office, the manager placed the photo inside a small frame and set it by the label printer. It looked right there, a reminder that learning is not just for classrooms, learning belongs in the middle of our tools. After the certificate, HR updated her title to logistics assistant and increased her pay. She still kept some morning hours at the house by choice. She liked the steadiness of it and the way the day started with small, caring tasks. But now she spent more time at the office, helping plan, check, and teach. She mentored 2 new team members, both thoughtful and a little nervous. She taught them to write down numbers, to read them out loud, to ask one clear question, and to say thank you even when the day was tight. They learned first to be kind to each other, and after that, the rest came easier. The client whose shipment had been saved sent an invitation for a site visit. They wanted to show how the delivered goods had helped them launch on time. The operations manager asked Amina to come along. They walked the floor together with the client's project director, who showed them the finished area and spoke with quiet pride. "Your clear process helped us," the director said. "We now use a similar checklist before we book trucks." Amina listened, grateful and a little amused that a checklist born on a kitchen counter had traveled so far, like a good story that finds new listeners. As seasons turned, the company continued to grow. Not every day was smooth, but fewer days were tangled, and when they were, the team untied the knots together. The phrase "steady voice" became part of their language. If a day looked crowded, someone would say, "Who's our steady voice today?" and a teammate would raise a hand, not as a hero, but as a helper. Amina sometimes raised her hand, and sometimes she leaned back and smiled as someone else led. Leadership meant both, she thought, knowing when to speak and when to make room for others to speak. One evening, Amina stayed late to finish a page in the playbook. The office was quiet, lights soft, the label printer asleep. She wrote a final section called "After the Day." It included 3 lines: "Write what worked, write what you would try first next time, thank the people who stayed kind." She printed it, slid it into the binder, and placed the binder on the shelf where new hires could find it easily. As she turned off her monitor, a message popped up from the operations manager: "Just saw the new page. It's perfect. Thank you." She left the office with her certificate tucked into a slim folder and stepped into an evening sky the color of late tea. The bus ride home rolled past small shops closing for the night, a man sweeping a doorstep, a child laughing as she hopped between tiles. Amina thought about how her life had widened without pushing anything else away. She still held the same values: quiet care, respect for work, careful words. Now those values had simply found new rooms to stand in. At the house, she set out 2 mugs for the morning and wrote a short note about a package that would arrive before noon. She placed the note beside a small paper boat she kept on the study desk, the same paper boat that had once held the draft of a letter to customs. She smiled. The boat had stayed through storms and calm. It reminded her that small, steady things can carry a surprising weight. Before bed, she opened her notebook to a clean page and wrote a few lines as a promise to herself. Keep learning. Keep listening. Ask simple questions. Match words and numbers. Share the same view. She added one last line, the one she had written inside her first textbook. Be calm, be clear, be kind. Then she closed the notebook and turned out the light. Years from now, people would remember the week the company almost missed a delivery. They would tell the story of a phone that rang in a quiet house, a careful woman who answered, and a team that found a rhythm together. They would point to a checklist near a printer and a binder on a shelf and say, "These make our days easier." And on some future afternoon, when a small problem started to grow, someone would pause and say, "Read it out loud," and the room would breathe in, breathe out, and match the words and numbers until the story was the same. That small act, simple, human, clear, would be the true inheritance of that week, a way of working that saved time, saved tempers, and, in quiet ways, saved the company again and again.